All right, I guess I'm gonna get started. So first off, welcome both people that are here in person at the lovely and beautiful KET studios and those across the state of Kentucky and perhaps beyond that are listening and watching at home. So my name is Adam Watson. I'm the digital learning coordinator for our district, which is Shelby County Public Schools. Just east of Louisville, probably know us, but just in case you don't geographically, just east of that big old county they call Jefferson County. Today we're going to be talking about our session, which is post-pandemic blended learning, looking back, looking ahead. And you'll see here in the beginning some contextualization for the session that will kind of spirit and theme throughout all the things we're going to talk about today. My hope always, the sessions that I attend or sessions that I'm going to present, is that can't help but get a little bit high in 50,000 feet level of things, talking about some stuff, but also some things in your hands, some tools and other strategies that hopefully by the time you get done, you'll have a few things new that you learned, a new tool, a new strategy, something that will hopefully inspire you to go back and work in your school district. So before I go any further and talk about me, let me just get a show of hands, kind of poll inside the room. How many people are classroom teachers in front of us right now? Most, a lot, okay? Do we have any school admin, principals, counselors, librarians? Any side together. Any district level support personnel. Okay, so a lot of classroom teachers, a few librarians that sat together. Good group, good group. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about me. Okay, we'll start a little. In case you missed, I was just talking about how awesome I am. That's what I missed. The humble button set in, and I just got kicked off. All right. So the report is what we were talking about, I think, when we came out of this. So let's talk about that. All right. Okay, Next Generation Learning Challenge is a Thinking Education Think Institute. Okay. And about a little over a year ago, in 2021, they reached out to about 70 districts across the nation. And they said, hey, for various reasons, we know you're doing some stuff, whatever stuff means, but things be some stuff of craft innovation, stuff of good stuff. And you're right in the thick of the pandemic, we understand. We would love for you to participate. Give us some, we're getting this huge report that we're generating. We'd love to have some information when you complete the survey. And so in my district, I was picked to kind of be the point person to fill out the survey. I did, submitted it, and frankly, I almost forgot about it. I haven't gone on almost a year. And then the Next Generation Learning Challenges reached out publicly to all the participants and said, hey, thank you so much. That report's about to come out. And so out of about 70 districts that were asked across the United States, maybe about 18 of them, let's say 15, 20, that were actually noted by name inside the report. Although all the information was definitely helpful, and they're very thankful about that. Only by name, about 20 districts got mentioned. Shelby County Public Schools is the only Kentucky district that was mentioned in the report. Twice! Always 2 times, all right? And the report was very interesting. The actual big picture of that little student there will lead you to their website, and then, if I may, okay, looks like that. And if you scroll about halfway down, you can actually get the PDF report. It's about a dozen or so pages. Okay, and you can see more information about where it came from and some other tabs and some information that we'll see as we go through. But going back to our presentation. Okay, so there were 3 key findings that the report came out with. They did in a press release when the report was finally published this spring. Here's finding number 1. It's a common sense assertion, they said. So I'm going to go quiet for a minute, and whether you're at home or in front of me right now, I'll just let you take a minute to read that assertion. Okay. I hopefully, or trying to be helpful at least, highlighted and read what I thought were the key words of this particular finding. Our school should model these same habits. How can we expect, for example, students to be good workers and all those soft skills, whatever phrase we'd like to use, if we are not modeling that behavior for them, right? So take a minute, whether you're online, maybe it's in the chat. If you're in front of me, just find a partner that's to your left or to your right. Talk to a partner really quick. I want you to share, because this isn't just about Shelby County or me. I know you all do some awesome things too. So just reflect for a minute on how you all, at your classroom level, or perhaps you see at your school level, modeling important attributes about being self-directed, creative problem solvers. Talk for a moment, Share with each other, go. Turn and talk. If you're in chat, feel free to put some comments in the chat. Gotcha. Awesome. Awesome. You got 30 more seconds. All right, about 5 seconds to wrap it up. All right, we'll bring it back in. I would love to hear one or two of you share about how you in your classroom, or maybe with a friend down the hallway, or in your school, or whatever, are modeling that idea of capable, caring, self-directed learners, creative problem solvers. So, who'd like to share? Who'd like to be called on? Okay, there we go. Say your name, just go ahead.
My name is Alison French, and I teach STEM in the research program at Lee's down here in Fayette County.
Allison, Lee's down in Fayette County. Thank you. Go ahead.
It's a lot of the students want to do problem solving at like a program, so I run my classroom pretty much like student driven. It's all student centered. The kids are doing PDL all the time. There's very few times where I'm actually showing them how to do something. It's more one of those like, oh, let me help you with this technology for a second, like you can figure it out on your own. And, authentic products that they're making or solutions that they're trying to come up with themselves. And I think that it works really well, but I also know that there are students that aren't in my program that don't have the ability to kind of self
Regulate.
Yeah,
Govern.
regulate and so I understand when there are other teachers in my school that are like, I just don't understand how you can do that. That's chaotic, or like, how do you even know they're learning, or they're not learning because there's so much noise and things like that. Like, I understand where they're coming from because it is a challenge, and you do have to adapt as a teacher to like just be annoyed and kind of organize chaos all the time.
Gotcha. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to be a satellite repeater for you, for our friends at home that may have not heard on the microphone. So, in summary, Allison is a teacher of students that, granted, a lot of it's by choice. They're in a program they're really excited to be in. She acknowledges that that's part of the help, but by the nature of her class, it's very PBL, project-based learning based, very oriented that direction. She's just basically the facilitator, instead of being the sage on the stage, you got it on the side. But I love the comment that you made about that some teachers come and go, "Ooh, it's so loud in here," right? How can you control? How can you govern? And that there are certainly students that may have some needs to be able to self-govern. That doesn't just happen instantly. Went to a beautiful SEL session earlier today with one of our friends in the room, and it's all about the fact, modeling. You got to start somewhere, and yes, it's something that's a skill that they have to develop, right? But noise might be the outcome of good learning, productive learning, right? Okay. Maybe one more share. Oh yes, share from
I was going to share something from the chat.
Please.
Christy, she says that my school lets us choose our own PD this year instead of mandating an entire school-wide PD. Likes choosing her own interests, time frame, etc. Kids like choices too.
I love, and you know what? Ooh, that's such a good point. It is really hard for any district, any principal in a school or wherever to stand up and say, you need to have voice and choice in your classroom. By the way, every single one of you are going to have this mandated meeting at the exact same thing. Hey, welcome back to school. You can model, right? Practice what you preach, all that good stuff. Anybody else? One more? Okay, you're gonna have a chance the next time. You didn't talk, I'm gonna make you talk. All right, let's read the second key finding, okay? And keep in mind the emphasis here about the emphasis pre-COVID. In other words, what did the school or district have in place before the stuff hit the fan, as they say, right? So let you read, take a minute. So this wasn't labeled as a common sense, but let's face it. If anyone thought, and that's all out there, schools and districts try this, thought they could pivot on a Friday for Monday for just a couple of weeks, March of 2020. It is nearly impossible. And yet, let's just say for the record how valiantly you probably personally, and certainly your friends and colleagues across this great Commonwealth, did just what they could on practically a moment's notice. I'll give you one example, not to toot on horns, but this is just a simple logistic thing. I mentioned that when I was hired, we started the process of going one-to-one with students' devices, and so that device would be a Chromebook. So Friday looked like this. Keep it. Thank you. That was it. Like, you know, there wasn't like we had to go purchase anything or do the Jefferson County move. I mean, I was watching that with like mouth and gate up. They were just scrambling around the, hey, you got a Chromebook? Thanks. Hey, wait a minute. You know, like, that's just the device issue. We're not talking about the pedagogy of the teaching, which is much more complicated and tougher. So that pre-strategy, but hey, there's always going to be another thing, or maybe this taught us something as far as how we must prepare or teach differently. We can, hey, second chances, right? We can do it now. But just talk for a minute. It's perhaps, you can think about COVID, for example, the pandemic. What was things that you had in place that thank goodness you did? Or recognition of the pandemic, what are things that you're putting in place to teach differently? I won't be negative and say for the next pandemic, but at least you recognize, okay, we can't do that. So turn and talk, again, in the chat room, but also in person. Turn and talk with your friends for a minute or two. Okay, about 30 more seconds. All right, about 5 seconds to reach back. Finish your thought there. All right, coming back. So I'll start with the online friends, and I'll ask one person who hasn't shared yet to share. Online, some online comments was Google Classroom. You know, we had started to use Google Classroom, right? And woo, that came in the land, right? That Monday. Hey, now we're really going to use Google Classroom. Maybe it was just, so that's a wonderful example. As far as like initiatives involved or project more intentional blended learning. Okay, that may have been an idea that we thought, wouldn't that be great if we were more intentional? And then on that Monday, we thought that'd be intentional because it's gonna get bad quick. So one share inside the group. Someone else hasn't shared yet that's in person. Yes, right here. What's your name first of all?
Janine.
From?
Fayette County.
Janine from Fayette County. Go ahead.
I think
using like Google Classroom or Canvas prior to COVID school really put some things in place for students and teachers. Now, given, once we realize it's going to be kind of a full-time thing, we have to do some learning, the kids have to do some learning. But like I said, if you're doing that prior to, you already kind of have those systems in place, or if you, are teaching them how to, do things project-based or problem-solving prior to having to do everything online, because obviously it's not going to be the same. Me
Right.
teaching in the room and me teaching on the Zoom are two different things. So, doing things in the classroom such as, problem-solving activities or project-based learning or whatever it may be, teaching them to be accountable for their learning, to have some autonomy to their learning, will, hope, I want to say pay dividends, but that's too strong of a phrase.
Yeah.
But it will be beneficial when it's, when it was time to move into full COVID school. So having those skills and things in place prior, just, it's just good skills, good 21st century skills that students, should have.
I love it. And I'll just echo that and repeat one thing there as a phrase. For example, PBL is wonderful pedagogy. It doesn't even necessarily have to be digital, although it's almost impossible not to be with it nowadays. But to that end, PBL is not a pedagogy that you can just start tomorrow necessarily, right? And so having some of that, let's take some, trial runs at this in person perhaps before you add the complication of, and now I'm trying to do it through Zoom. Again, kind of common sense, but, and let's go to the last finding. I'll let you read it here. Okay, key phrase here being resilient and adaptive innovation. Resilient, adaptive, okay? Last chance, I'm going to be a little quicker and tired this time around, but go ahead and talk for at least a minute with your partner friends. Maybe an example of how you all are currently being resilient or adaptive, or maybe you were at the beginning of the pandemic. So in the past or the present, go. Resilient and adaptive innovation. Very quickly, I want to share from our chat friends at home. One of the things, and they mentioned they were a rural county, in Shelby County, it's suburban bedroom community, you can use those phrases, but we're a big ag community, we're a big rural community ourselves. We definitely have that last mile issue of connectivity, right? Yeah, you could be on the highway, blazing away on internet. You could be literally 1 mile off the highway. Teacher, not an economic issue, access, no internet. Of course, there's economic barriers as well. So in partnership or tandem with that idea, as far as having to be resilient and adaptive, is the idea that, interestingly, good pedagogy came to save the day, because you have to be adaptive and say, well, all right, maybe you can't stream that bit. Well, how can you demonstrate your learning, your mastery of stuff? If you can't do it in this way, how about that way? So you have to be flexible, right? And really, good learning and good mastery, competency-based learning, competency-based education is something that we're moving toward as a system in our district. That's part of what you should be doing anyway, right? But with connectivity, internet, technology can be the barrier. Interestingly, one door closes, another one opens, right? All right, all of these things, back. All these things, I want you to notice will pop out in yellow, the 1, 2s, and 3s. You're going to see that throughout the slideshow, as far as where I try to very deliberately make a connection to the thing to one of these 3 findings. So you'll hear me repeat some of those phrases like resilient, adaptive, innovation, that kind of thing as we go forward. All right, from the website, the next generation of the challenge group, they had this graphic and I love it, okay? Because the reality of it is here, right? We have where this is the goal. The students is that they're working independently with peers, ready for learning, work, and life. Yay, right? The reality is that for a lot of us, it might be right about here. School, teachers, right? It's the classroom level, and I'm going to try something different. Hopefully my friends down the hall will catch on. Maybe you have a principal in admin and leadership that helps shape the teaching, learning, and building capacity. But the real movers and drivers eventually must be that the district, and even in really starting with that board level, to make it policy, to open up those opportunities. We in Shelby County were fortunate, even pre-pandemic, to have that going on to set up the table. So the class, because there's so many innovative teachers, you can throw a stone and you're going to hit a lot of innovative teachers. Don't do that. Don't throw a stone at innovative teachers. But the idea of it is that there's a lot of them out there. But without some really broad-based support, knowing that at the board and the district level, I got your back. I give you people. I'll give you policies to make that happen. It's hard. Okay. So I mentioned that we were mentioned twice, bragging, in the report. what two things were we mentioned for? Well, the two things we were mentioned for was our profile of our graduate. Back in 2017, we were asked a question that seems so simple. What do we want a Shelby County graduate to be? And walk across that stage. Well, it wasn't that they could do the Pythagorean theorem. I mean, content's important, but what's bigger than that, right? So we got input from the community, from students and teachers, parents, industry leaders, owners of companies, anyone and everyone to come over the course of a year and create what we prioritized as these 6 competencies: critical thinker, responsible collaborator, lifelong learner, effective communicator, global citizen, inspired innovator. We had that in place. It wasn't perfected. We are, even as we speak, doing better jobs of measuring it and performing. You'll see a few of those things as we go forward. But the point is, that was something we had done likely pre-pandemic. So the report mentioned us by name about that. We'd also done, in the middle of the pandemic, we knew that we needed to do 2 things: functionally and pragmatically share the wealth. People are doing good stuff, right? But you're in this school and you're separated by a pandemic on top of that, push, right? So distance being an issue. How can we make teachers feel better connected? And on a morale issue, how can we make them feel like they're being effective? Okay? Because efficacy was hurting a little bit. When we're all doing something that, I don't know, no one in history of ever has ever done. So we came up with this idea of doing some podcasts that are video oriented. And in the first round, it was called Looking Forward, because we were looking forward to the future. We were also looking forward when we come back in person, right? Looking forward was, what are you doing? That's basically the question. What are you doing, and what are you doing now that's going to help you think differently about teaching when we come back to the classroom? They were over Zoom, and they were recorded. And they weren't meant to be highly sophisticated videos with highly sophisticated editing. But we shared our knowledge, we shared it with each other, and we shared it out to the public. Then we came back in person and thought, woo, we got that licked. What do you mean hybrid, like we're doing now? That was another challenge, right? How do we do in person and for 20 kids at home? So once again, we said, well, let them lead, right? We asked our teachers, share us what you're doing that's working well, or your tips, your strategies, your tools. And so that was the second podcast series. Those podcast series are still public. All of this is clickable, by the way. And again, that was another thing that got mentioned in the report. So we are going to sharing our district story, highlighting how those 3 findings come up throughout these slides. Now, we share some learning tools and strategies. Most of them are things we've actually done. There's a handful, though, are things that just discovered, just found out, and just publicized, and just pushing out that we recommend, okay? Or see potential, okay? So anytime, anywhere learning for our teachers, remember that modeling idea, right? So the shrubbery was a thing that came out again right as the pandemic was starting, launched officially the summer of, a few months later. But it was a Google site, and the opportunity here was we need one place to go for the stuff. We had Google Docs galore. I mean, I'm guilty of that. Had lots of resources, lots of guides. Where can we go to be the one place? And as simple as this was, it was super helpful to kind of help construct our stuff, to pull our resources together. You can see if I walk into the district, for example, I'm like, oh, I work a MacBook here. Go to the shrubbery, click that tab. You got some places and stuff to do.
What is the shrubbery? I didn't need to know where that came from.
Very good question. Shelby County Resource Hub. Plus I like Monty Python, so it worked out there. A little bit of both. So the shrubbery. Plus was one of those goofy names that would just stick in your head. Like instead of calling it, the Adam Watson site or that tech resource website, was the shrubbery. Came something, right? So the shrubbery. In addition to that, in the shrubbery, we have a virtual PD page. This is something that is now a year or two in. It's only in the last 12 months, actually. And I was like, okay, here's the deal. One of the things that was a big aha for me is that in the middle of the pandemic, as we were going into that first summer, it sounds bad, but there's a lot of people that needed hours, like secretarial and admin staff, right? It's like, how can they, because, it can't be in building, but we want to make productive time and not just like, hey, Adam, why don't you do some Google PD virtual? I've done this in person multiple times, but okay, let me try this. I'll do this completely over Zoom. So I did. And the idea of it was, hey, you can follow along, you got slides, you got activities. I want you to do a thing, like make a Google Doc with some rules and instructions, then you submit it to me through a Google Classroom. And remember, this is not necessarily even teachers per se. This is like admin and stuff like that, administrative assistants. So with our group that was probably the less techy of them all, I took a chance. And the thing is that I learned from that, till this day, I still have some of these admin assistants come to me and say, it was 2 to 3 years ago now, right? That Google training was so good. And I was so involved, and you pushed me a little bit. You asked me to make a Google Doc. But okay, and I did it. But then by doing it, I knew how to do it. All the things were like light bulb moments. So I recognized that, combined with the fact that we need to have a virtual system, because I don't know about you, but it would be easy in life if everyone was just there by August 1st. That never happens. You have a teacher that strolls in, it's a science teacher for 7th grade, like October 27th. What do you do? You can't wait a whole year. How do you provide them support? Yes, I can make appointments and all that, but you have to be mindful and effective. So having a place where they can go and virtually get stuff is helpful. So just to give you an example, there's a particular doc on that Google site page. Okay, let's see. Let's find Lexia Core 5 on our adaptive learning system. Are you returning? Well, hey, if you just need to reference something for questions, here's some Google slides that would help. If you're brand new, those Google slides are actually going to be incorporated into a Google form. So the Google form says, click here. That forces the copy of the slides into your Google Drive. Then walk through the slides. They have embedded videos. They have some points where it's like, reflect question number 1, answer this question, type that in the slide. And when you're done, you're actually going to submit that very slide back to me. And there's proof that you've done professional development. Plus, you have your own slides that you can access. And if a principal or anyone else is curious, hey, did you get their hours in? Because notice, it's not about the minutes in the seat, but I do equivocate that. Okay, that'd be about 1 PT hour worth of time. Then that's a way that they can do that. Let me submit it, and there you go. Okay. So, I mean, this isn't like, woohoo. I mean, it's Google Forms and Google Docs and Google Slides, but it really creates an organizational system where people can do it on their own when they need it, as they need it. And if you want proof and tracking of it, that's possible too. Okay. Student-to-student interaction. Verso, Rosalind Manning from Oldham County showed this at KISTI just this last spring. Never heard of this. But the thing that I love about it, and the thing that ties into what we're talking about today, is that we recognize, and you'll see this a couple of times today, the power of relationships, but more importantly, discussion. How do you get kids to talk? And as an English teacher, high school English teacher, that was always the issue of, I could talk. Okay. Well, then the next level was trying to get students to talk to me. Discussion. But the real power, and this is educators, is peers, students talking to each other. How can you do all of that in digital way that's really more effective? This Verso, which is mainly a free site, is great for that. Because you set up these discussion thread forums, basically, and that in itself isn't anything revolutionary. What I love about Verso is that in the creation of it from the teacher side, it really walks you through and be mindful of, what am I asking the students to do? What are instructions clear, right? I can set this up where students can give me all their comment or their answers to my question that are hidden from each other. And then now I make it visible. And now I ask the students to talk to each other, comment on at least 1 or 2 other comments made by others. That sounds like, what? But here's the problem. Some discussion forums, that feature isn't there. And so what happens is this. The ready to go rare morning students come in, first 10 or 12, and they answer, right? And then they get comments. But it's that 29th or 30th student that never gets a comment because they showed up about 5 minutes before what we do, right? By using a platform, by being intentional, answer, and now suddenly all 30 are live. And hopefully, potentially all 30 can get comments equally. A little equity issue, right? It's a great website. As many of these things are in the slideshow, it's clickable. You can go to a blog that I did in Verso. It shows some more details, more screenshots. You also have a little quick check-in, a little SEL check-in. How are you feeling? This is much more prompt-driven and template-driven. The other one's much more open into discussion. But you can create this in like 30 seconds. Push that out to the kiddos, get some responses, and get some responses back. So all that is in Verso. How many people are familiar with Flipgrid? Who wasn't got familiar with Flipgrid last year? It's the big tool. I won't spend time talking about Flipgrid except just to say it's a great opportunity for students to record a video response, which gives lots of students opportunities to communicate because of barriers. they communicate thanks to the video response, and they couldn't have communicated before. Maybe there's SEL issues. Maybe there's EL issues, right? So I love that. But the thing I'll point out about Flipgrid is that that was a tool that I pushed on. This is a great thing for years. And people were like, tell you what, we all ever have to be, home from, I don't know, a pandemic. I know what you said. Got through it. So that became a really big tool because people realize the power of relationships. We need to see each other. If we're not seeing each other in person in the classroom, right? But just like so many things, Flipgrid went through the pandemic phase, and then people came back in person, was like, you know what, that would be a neat way that could be my homework, right? Do this thing, respond to this comment, or you got the Chromebooks in front of us, let's just do it right now in class. So a tool that kind of helped us keep together has paid off, and a lot of teachers on the other side of it are still fans and using it, which is a great thing. Digital classroom management. So I was at ISTE just a few weeks ago, okay? And Holly Clark, great educator, she's out there on the internet and on Twitterverse. She talked about this, and it made me think, oh, that's a good point. Made me think differently. So I wanted to share that with you. In the speaker notes, there's some links to her slides and some other stuff. But she talked about that we got to stop thinking and talking about choice boards and start thinking about explore boards. That could be semantic, but if you look at the way those are defined there, you can see the issue that maybe a quote unquote choice board is not the best. Hey, tic-tac-toe, complete some tasks. 1, 2, 3, great, right? But if there's kind of a completionist, low level of thinking attitude about it, then you're getting what you give, okay? Or you get what you get, all right? So an Explorer board is an electronic version that's carefully and intentionally, going to that chatter order, intentional blended learning, right? Carefully creating with a pedagogical purpose, a walk through a topic, okay? This is also applicable to a template. But I just want to walk through, and I have to admit, okay, this is my contribution to the digital community there. I came up with an acronym because we need acronyms, right? I mean, there's not enough of them in education. I'm marching to Frankfurt tomorrow. Ease into an Explorer board. Here's some components. These could be good for Explorer board or maybe just blended learning in general, frankly. First, you got to engage the audience. Give them a crafty video that's sort of really creative. Maybe it's a 2 minutes out of a TED Talk. It's something. It's like, wow, look at that. Okay, and we'll TikTok, short little thing that catches our attention. We could probably do that. Next, okay, you ask the students to explore the topic, build some schema with some buffer rails. Don't just say Google it. But here's a video, here's a website, here's a short article, right? Explore this topic. Find out some things. It's a little open-ended. Maybe you do all three, or maybe you choose the multimedia that you like. Read the article, watch the video, but do at least one of them. Now, they have some schema, they have some background knowledge. Explain what you want the students to do, the directions and step-by-step, rubric strengths. They should apply what they've learned. And optimally, voice and choice here, okay? The final product up to date. How they can do that. Okay, on the S, they should share it. It's meaningful if other people see it. We learned that for a while, right? When only the teacher reads the essay, that's how they treat it. Yeah, whatever, Mr. Watson, right? But if peers see it, or it's part of a more meaningful thing where it's to maybe persuade and argue something that needs to be changed or done in our world, in our community, whatever, sharing it and publishing it is significant. Make it meaningful and authentic. And lastly, a meaningful way to extend the learning for those that need more help or they've already got it. Okay? So ease and to next one.
Add evaluate at the end, make you evaluate. That way you have another
Ease. I love it. That's a good point. I almost added something because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're probably assessing it. And some of these, obviously, is for the quote unquote grade. That's a whole other conversation for another session topic. But yes, in some way, if it's not yourself or the community saying, I think I will create that card, here's your assessment, you persuaded them, right? But yes, some type of evaluation for points for grade or something. Anyway, again, topic for another day. All right, Go Guardian. When we got this pre-pandemic, I was skeptical. I was worried the system that would allow a teacher to be able to see every screen of the Chromebook would be treated in the worst possible ways. I was worried it would be a warden approach, right? The teacher sitting there like, Tony! You know, we got more important things to do as instructors, right? But I mean, I was wrong. in a big way. The pandemic helped me see this in a different way for sure. But even though, yes, Go Guardian in some ways is just that, the communication aspects of it became a huge and valuable thing, especially when these 30 students were at home and not in front of it, right? So you can message students. You can push out a link that everyone automatically in their Chromebooks would suddenly be forced to be transformed and teleport to, right? There was ways, both in text, but even in video chat, the internet was old enough, that you could be like, hey, I need to talk here for a second. Here's the best part. Okay, you're troubleshooting, and this is on a low level, I get it, but I can't get to what you're asking me to do. Okay, let me through Go Guardian, let me see where you're at. Oh, see, that's what it is. You're not clicking here. There it is. The one in the lower right in blue. Yes, you can actually see that. And this became a relationship messaging builder far more than I would give you credit. And it still carries over to today. It is a quick way to be like, tell you what, when we see your screen, even though you're right in front of me, just over there. It's an easy way to have those conversations and message. So again, something with Go Guardian that I didn't anticipate would become valuable during the pandemic and afterwards. Virtual reality couldn't go anywhere. So this trade show had a trade show virtually, and it was fascinating. We had a loader program, we were avatars, we were walking around to trade booths virtually. That blew my mind. Okay, the software is called Revella, and so and let me just state for the record, this is just to open your mind a bit about thinking about the future and thinking about possibilities of the future, because right off the bat, this won't work on a Chromebook, so that would knock us out, right? You'd have to have a laptop. But the point is to think about classrooms differently. Through Revella, I talked to these vendors. They said, well, there's this guy in California, he's using this with his classrooms. And he plans to keep doing it even after the pandemic because he sees the value of it. So I did a virtual interview where he entered this virtual island of a school and talked in a recording. I'm not showing you the whole thing, but let's just show you this little segment here real quick.
That's awesome. Well, walk us through a little bit about what would be a typical instruction hour. And I know there's no such thing as typical, I understand that, but give me an idea of, from a student's perspective, the class begins. Walk through what an instructional hour is like when you're holding one of these virtual reality classes.
Okay, sure. So one thing to note is that when I was teaching, our classes are combined with different academic subjects. So there was actually a credentialed English teacher that was in here with me, and we co-taught English parts of the class while I handled the technical. So the English teacher and I would be in here with the students. And once we were all here, we really started it like a long day. You got the board up here, and it's fully controllable. Sorry, I was losing my mic there for some reason.
No problem.
Anyway, the board up here can be used just like any computer screen. It's almost like a tab in a Chromebook. So I can go to any website I want. I could load our Canvas course. Just put up their instructions for the day. We start there. I mean, honestly, we just run it like a normal day in a classroom with the avatars.
That is amazing. I mean, it seems so simple because basically, like you said, there's computers, there's desks, there's right, laser recorder. I love it. All these different laser recorders. Absolutely, absolutely. So. And
the level of interactivity on this is fantastic too, because we could throw videos up there, we could share presentations and all of that. But one of the cool things is anybody can zoom in on that screen. So all of the students, even the ones in the back that normally have a terrible view, from their seat, they can click the little magnification and get the best view of the class from any seat.
That's awesome. Well, walk us through a little bit about what would be.
We already walked through. Really quick, one of the things that's like, okay, but tell me more. He said there was a time where there was 3 students, virtual avatars, that were in a class and they were presenting in front of the other ones. And they had worked out at like, I talk, we talk, and all that kind of stuff. Well, the kid had not been present. He had just made a few of those sessions as far as like finding this out. So there's a moment in the presentation where these 3 virtual avatars are standing there. One talks, the third one talks, the second one's supposed to talk. Nothing. The 2 avatars turn. And the guy who's the second avatar realized that 2 people are staring at him. Oh, I'm supposed to go. It happened as natural as that as it would be in real life. That's crazy. That's what a virtual classroom like You can see that versus just Plaid Zooming or something like that. Anyway, makes you think, makes you wonder. Virtual learning, okay? This is something that we're launching. We're purchasing a district license for coming up in this coming school year. Streamable learning, think of it like a virtual field trip. Sign up, there's a fee to pay for, but you pay for the ability to access a calendar full of events, and the partnerships are really rich. In fact, I'm going to jump out and show it to you really quick. All these museums and institutes from across the United States and beyond. So what happens is on this particular Tuesday, you really want to talk to the Dolphin Institute, right? You sign up, you register for the 1 o'clock session. Come time for 1 o'clock, it's just a teacher that needs to worry about an account, logs in. Now you have this expert from the Dolphin Institute talking about dolphin stuff, right? And there's some chat interactivity and things that you can do with that. What a wonderful way to bring the outside in. And granted, when you're in a virtual situation, maybe it's pandemic or maybe it's just resources, I can't fly to San Diego and get to the Dolphin Institute. Bottom line is, it's a wonderful way to bring that outside expertise and make the learning much more authentic than just another PowerPoint or whatever, right? So, jump out here for just a second.
Would you say that it would be like career oriented or connected?
It's more about the content and the topic. Although, wow, like I really want to be a marine biologist. Well, in Louisville, that's a little bit hemmed in, right? I can't just, there's no marine, right? So what would it be a great opportunity to be like, let's see these different people in authentic working situations doing the thing, especially if in our state or in our city or our town we can't. So I just want to scroll just to give you an idea of some of these people. I'm trying to read back. I'll read from here and you look up there. So you have the Alaska Sea Life Center, okay, Smithsonian American Art Museum, Mexicarte Museum, Memorial BC Museum, Memorial Tyrell Museum, Texas State Aquarium, Museum of Art, NASCAR Hall of Fame, Memphis Zoo, so many of these people. So to me, that's really a huge value added part of it here is the wide variety of different people, partnerships, and institutes that you have access. I see a hand.
Yes, there was a question online here. What does it cost, if you know that, for streamable learning?
For a district license, it's going to, I'll just say it costs several $1,000s. I'll leave it at that. You talk, email click.
That's for district license.
That's on the district level. So think about that, I guess, from the good or the bad. The positive of that is that for that, you get everyone who's a teacher inside of the district to be able to access this and be able to do it. Okay. So virtual field trips, virtual learning. No, I want to share, sorry. Okay. Cultivate. We, like probably many of you, how many of you have some kind of virtual academy in your district or in your school? A couple hands, okay. We did as well for secondary, for 6 through 12. And even the middle school was relatively recent, but okay, secondary students. The deal is though, we didn't have a virtual academy for K through 5. Well, pandemic happens. We thought, well, how can we accommodate this as people are coming back in person, but not everyone's safe or not everyone's comfortable about coming back in person. So we opened up K through 5. There's a special waiver that we had to ask from the state of Kentucky, along with many others. And last year was the first year of doing it. We're continuing that this year, and then we'll reevaluate. Depending on numbers, we'll see the viability of the program going forward. The thing is, going into some of these features we're talking about what did you have before, pre-pandemic and all that kind of stuff. We brought in real elementary teachers, most of the big ones, right? We brought in real elementary teachers who use the blended learning and all the things they have done. Obviously, they were kind of creating prop friends who were really into it, really did well. But they became the actual all-day teachers. When I say all day, there'd be a Zoom-in meeting, then they go through the things. Then they come back, and catch and release throughout the day. We built that on what was a pretty decent structure of what Cultivate was for our secondary friends. The secondary friends have an online course program. We use APES. We've used that for the last year and a half or so. But we knew that for a K through 5, where it's not just to watch this video, answer the questions, watch this video. So the teacher being the elementary teacher doing the teaching was much more important and pedagogically the right thing to do. So again, it was building on what we've done in the past and increasing that structure and expanding the structure of virtual. So quickly through these legacy things, leaving a legacy might sound kind of highfalutin, but I think whether it's the students leaving a legacy to their community or us us modeling that by trying to leave a legacy for our students, how they can be better, more productive, how we can share our story like we're doing right now. So we mentioned the profile of a graduate. One of the things out of the profile of a graduate that makes it have more teeth and authenticity is that the transition levels of 5th, 8th, and 12th grade, students have to do a defensive learning. And they use profile of graduate language on how did I basically become a good learner. I'm a 5th grader, I've learned all there is, and I'm ready for middle school, so to speak. So this is an example, and this is not terribly cherry picked. There are other videos and other teachers or students that could be like, oh, and some. This is a good in the middle, right? I want you to hear the story of this 5th grader sharing briefly about some of her competencies for the defenses of learning that she did this past school year.
Here at Heritage, I have not only developed into a responsible collaborator, but I'm also an effective communicator. I confirm this because I adapt to the needs of the audience. I have had to do this during my Native American exhibitions. Now, like I said earlier, we presented to 4th and 2nd grade. I had to understand that 7th grade can't quite understand or comprehend exactly as much as 5th graders can. So then I had to break down sentences and times so that way they could then understand what we were talking to them about. I also had to do the same in my math game project in 3rd grade. At the time, we were just learning to multiply and divide. So we had to create a game board to then prove that. So I had to understand that the grades below me don't know how to multiply and divide as I just was learning myself. So rather than having them multiply the 2 factors to get a product, I then had them add the 2 factors to get a sum instead. I would say here at Heritage, I've grown as an effective communicator. In 2nd grade, whenever I was doing our wax museum, I just talked to everybody the same, no matter their age or grade level. And now, and especially in my Native American exhibitions, I talk to the audience differently based on their age levels.
Okay. Right. Here's the idea, right? Profile of Graduate came out years ago. Then the pandemic happened. And yet, right after the pandemic, we have a student like this lovely Heritage 5th grade student able to communicate about their ability to communicate, right? The learning continued. But if that hadn't been in place, if that had been in place prior to, we wouldn't have gotten there, okay? Okay, there was a new school that opened December of 2019. It was our first K-8 school, right? Which is in itself a little bit of an adventure. And when they finally got in the building, about 6 months after they anticipated, all the people in December 2019 were like, well, nothing else would happen. 3 months later, they all get kicked out of their school, right? The pandemic happens. So I shared the story of Marnell C. Mormon, the K-8 school that I'm talking about, at a presentation in Pittsburgh. It was this conference called Ed Spaces. And they asked me to write it up as an article, which I did. That's clickable and you can read about that. The key thing again, was looking at the idea of modeling. That literally the structure itself. And you don't have to build a brand new school to do this. Structures can be lots of things. It could be classroom structures, management structures, right? Or just trying to be innovative or hacking the space you currently have to create some ways to have flexible learning spaces and so on. But that's a homework assignment for you. Everyone has to read that and give me a 3-sentence summary. So there you go. Thank you. You put that in my inbox. Our Shelby County podcast we talked about earlier. Those are hyperlinks to the different playlists of all those series of videos and podcasts. Your time's running down, but I want to show this little excerpt from a podcast from that first series, Looking Forward. Sarah Buchanan is a West Middle School English teacher, and she was talking about the power of communication. And I want to, as we're wrapping up at the end here, I really want to highlight that. But the idea of relationships and communication has always been important in education. We just had to figure out when the pandemic happened how to change it. The irony being, if anything, it opened up lots of avenues for communication. She's going to talk about that. He says, hold on.
They had to manage their own wireless capabilities. I think that they never realized how much time or technology it would take to kind of do school from home. Communication with their teachers has changed. We have those kids who have never had a one-on-one conversation with a teacher because they're so shy, or they never raise their hands in class because they don't want to be embarrassed. Those same kinds of things happen in a virtual classroom. And so personalized learning, wait time, small group conferences, one-on-one conferences, different avenues of communication for the kids to reach out to us have all been incorporated. I think in one day I will get a text message, a GoGuardian chat, a Teams chat, an email, and a Zoom call, and a Google Classroom, and an Empower. So, you know, the kids are reaching out through 8 different avenues of communication to me. So that's a lot for me to manage, but it's worth it to let the kids feel comfortable in that communication.
Very true. Last slide I'll share, talk about really quick. We recognize the pandemic made it all the more clear if it wasn't already, that how kids are assessed, how they can demonstrate what they know, what they've mastered, what they've learned. We've got to think of things differently. We got to take this as an opportunity, to use a word from earlier as well, right? Instead of the bad and negative of it, let's use this as an opportunity. Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, KDE, has created the system. We're in their 3rd cohort now. We run the first one of it, called Local Laboratories of Learning. What it is it's encouraging these districts to, in a laboratory kind of let's find out how this works for us kind of way, what are ways that we can think of changing the paradigm, especially that we have the annual assessment. Okay, this isn't that multiple choice test, and that's the be all end all. There's really no other way to rank or determine or decide how a student is performing. What are ways that we can have local control over that and would be just as valid? We need, there are many of the districts who haven't created a profile of graduate yet, for example. So they're in the midst of doing that as their project. Ours is we have a profile of graduate that's 5 years old, but we need to make sure that all the members of the community are aware of it and we're realizing the value of it, right? So we came up with a communication plan and a process that's going to extend for the rest of this school year. These are clickable articles from Kentucky Teacher that talks more about that process and that hope as we go forward of changing that. But here's the key thing. Now's the time, right? We've got to take advantage of this. Thanks to maybe that influx of technology, the ways we've had to think of teaching and learning differently, to do it differently. Because if not now, then when, right? So our hope and opportunity is that Shelby County, not only for our own sake and self-assessment, but on behalf of all of our partnerships and all the local laboratories of learning, we change it for the state of Kentucky. And then the United States in the world, right? Okay. So certainly click and read on those if you want some more information. I am at the end, we're almost at the end of time. So I just want to first off, thank you before you go anywhere, whether you're on Zoom or you're here in person, for coming today. But I'm going to open up the floor if there's any questions as we end up. And group chat as well. A couple minutes of questions. Thoughts, concerns. I want to ask you to think of a takeaway then. Share with me something that's like an insight you had, or I'm going to do this when I go back to my school this year. Tell me a takeaway or an insight. Somebody.
Well, I'm gonna suggest that because I was telling her, it seems like after, COVID is over, a lot of teachers have gone back to using ditto sheets.
Yes.
And I'm like, why are we using so many copies if they still have the Chromebooks in their classroom?
Yes.
But it's still copies. The copy machine is overrunning with paper. And I'm like, so I'm gonna try to suggest that maybe our teachers do some more of that virtual learning or hybrid, some type of way. And I also, this has nothing to do with anything, but I just think our school system needs to go back and rethink some of this stuff because we already went virtual. So don't go back to the way things were. We need to move forward a different way. Like I was saying, if students get suspended from school, they don't stay home. That means you're on virtual today. You don't get to stay home. So that's one of those things we need to rethink. And I think that's what I kind of took away.
And I think the phrase coming up from earlier in our chat too was intentional blended learning. Yeah. I'm not asking people to sit on Zoom and become zombies. Don't do that. Okay, there was bad aspects of that for sure, but there's the best of both. What is it that makes me as a human being professional in front of you in virtual flesh, combined with tools and aspects of digital learning to engage and enrich and make you the students, make a difference, right? For yourself and for the world, right? We can do the best of both and do that if we do it smartly. But we got to learn the lessons from all that. And again, don't go back. It's like if we built the trains and the railroad tracks in the 1800s and said, yeah, but I'm just gonna walk to California. Yeah, well, it's right there. There's some grain. Anyway, All right, one other takeaway before we close out?
I mean,
Yeah.
I.
Explore board up here.
I like the way it was arranged and organized.
Here, just to emphasize, and I'm guilty of doing this as a teacher, okay, so Adam raises his hand. If you do that choice board, that's tic-tac-toe, and it's a thing like fill out the crossword puzzle, see, it's not necessarily the tic-tac-toe part of it that's bad. It's how mindful you are that there's real learning happening and impact. You know, I like the fact that tic-tac-toe at least opens the door for some student choice, so let's celebrate that. But the explore board is the next generation of thinking that, okay, we'll be a lot more mindful of how we might walk a student through hooking them with an idea of interest, building their schema, and eventually demonstrating the learning. Last one, go ahead.
And I think with blended learning, you know, I don't think you should just do all things digital. You know, I think there should be some options, you know, back in last March when, you know, we came back to in-person learning. You know, we were reading a text on collections. I taught 6th grade ELA. Some of the kids would want books. They didn't want to see the text on the screen. They wanted to, you know, to have the actual book in their hand. And some didn't. Some just were fine, just scrolling through. So I think just making sure that we, you know, have those options available. And, you know, not necessarily just saying, okay, everything's on the Chromebook. You know, it's just like they, you know, need a break sometimes. But I can see that, you know, it's the best of both worlds, if you will.
Right, and how far the pendulum swings, you know, trying to center, I'm all about that moderate middle of trying to figure out the best of both, right? And what the student likes, you know. If they're more tactile, then it's lean to that by all means. Keep the books. I'm a library fan. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for everything. I've got my information, my email address, my Twitter handle, my blog, and so on as far as linked up there. Thank you so much for participating and being here today in person or at home. I appreciate your all's time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.